Okay, so the paper Gabe has nicely linked in the journal club chat. It is on plant microbial fuel cells, which is a microbial fuel cell that utilizes the waste output of plants and their root systems to provide food to the microbes in a microbial fuel cell to generate electricity. Microbial fuel cells are little anaerobic ecosystems where, because of the lack of oxygen, and when they respire the ATP, it produces hydrogen ions, and any free ions can be moved to create an electrical current, which is what you harvest for the electrical production. And by putting plants in it, it means that, they become solar powered, and don't have to be sitting in bogs and swamps, which is what most microbial fuel cells tend to live in. So the paper touches on two different uses of the plant microbial fuel cells. The first one is the obvious one of generating electricity through biological processes, and unfortunately it doesn't generate anywhere near as much as standard solar cells at only about 1.6 milliwatts per kilometer squared, which is a tiny amount of electricity, but they act as carbon sinks at the same time. So it balances things out and makes a much nicer process. And they put through the idea of putting it on rooftops to make green rooftops to capture carbon in city centres and areas like that, whilst giving back a little bit of energy into the grid. They also discuss the one that I prefer the idea of using it for water treatment, where a load of toxic things like chromium and pyrene are basically removed by 98% and 70% respectively through these fuel cells if the water that requires treatment is passed through the root systems of these fuel cells, which is far more useful in my opinion than the meager amounts of electricity they tend to produce. And then the electrical output monitors the health of the entire ecosystems that are doing all of this cleanup on the water. The plant microbial fuel cells have two key factors into their efficiency on both of these processes. Is the electrical generation and the cleaning of the water supply. The first is the most obvious one, and it's the light source that's provided. The intensity of the light, the quality, which is the different wavelengths that are provided to it, because obviously a plant's not going to utilize a green wavelength, hence why all the leaves are green, but every plant has different wavelengths that they are especially good at working with. The photoperiodism, which is what the cycle of light is. So in normal, how much daytime, how much nighttime. But if it's in an artificial environment, that can be changed obviously to pure sunlight and etc. The studies that this reviews shows that as the light increases, it always will maximize the output voltage of the system. So it's a very common sense connection between them. The more light, the better the system works. The other one that has the biggest impact is the photosynthetic pathway that the plants use. The paper discusses the three pathways, C3, C4 and CAM. It discusses C4 and C3 quite extensively, heavily favouring the C4 being at a 6% efficiency to the C3s, which is 4.6. And the fact that both of...
Can you show us where you're at on the paper? Or
can I was going...
give us a zoom?
Yeah, I was going through notes. I'm jumping all over the paper.
Okay,
that's probably not the best way to... I jumped to the conclusion section and I sort of worked back a bit from there.
All right.
He's on the second page. Basically, there's a table. There's A, B, and C, and 2.2 on the second page, I think. Actually, third page, sorry.
Yeah.
Just want everybody to be able to follow along.
Sorry, I'm talking quite quickly as well, aren't I? Sorry, yeah. So they evaluate C3 versus C4 photosynthetic pathways, is giving a maximum limit of the photosynthetic efficiency of 6% on the C4 versus 4.6% on the C3. So this means that the C4 utilizes the incoming light more effectively, so that there is more energy output and more water treatment that goes on. And they don't discuss the CAM pathway too much because as the CAM plants tend to grow slower and thus take up biomass less. And one of the key things that is affecting the efficiency of the conversion rate is the amount of the root system that there is. So the slower the plant grows, the less root system there is, the less effective it is over time. And so they focus on C3 versus C4. But it seems like it's unanimously C4 is just better than C3 throughout the paper. They do comment that CAM plants would be better in dry, arid regions, because they tend to be more resilient, and they take up CO2 and water throughout the night as well as throughout the day. Yeah, but as a result, they also grow slower, so it's not as effective. What was it?
Does anyone have any questions right now? That was a whole bunch to take in real fast, especially if you don't have a plant biology background. So has anyone got any questions about some of the material, or are we just soaking it up here?
What's RA stand for in the periodic table? RA. Capital R, lowercase a.
That's not periodic table. That's part of the conversion efficiency equation that they give in point 2.2 photosynthetic pathways. There's an equation where the conversion efficiency is PE times RP times RA times ER. PE is the photosynthetic efficiency. So for C4 plants, that is 6%. C3, that's 4.6%. And RP is the rhizodeposition, which
Real
is...
quick,
yeah.
So he's on page 3 of the paper, on the right side, 2-2, and then kind of past the A, B, and C points.
Yeah. The A, B, and C points just explain what these are. RP, the rhizodeposition, or deposition, or I'm not sure how to say it, is basically the waste material that the roots put out, as well as dead bits of root fibers that fall off all the gases, etc. RA and ER. Oh, wait, I'm trying to find where they are. As compared, is subsequently available to...
I'm looking as well now.
It doesn't actually... I didn't notice that before. It doesn't actually say what they are. It just says they're 30% and 9% respectively.
Yeah, because I saw that 30%. I was like, that's pretty high. Like, I don't know. So.
Gabe, do you know what RA and ER could stand for? Oh, RA is available microbes, and the ER is the fuel production of the plant for the microbes.
Yeah, I was sorry, I was just hunting for my microphone on mute. It's unfortunately it is not a direct letter to letter type of thing. Yeah, so the rhizodisposition is your RA, and then like available for microbes is your ER. I don't know why that is.
Very strange choice of letters.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's some sort of like random ass Latin shit going on there, or something that they came up with, and then they were like, well, this isn't the best description, and so, but we're still going to keep it because we've been using it, and we can't go back through our lab notebooks and change every single instance of writing the letters RA. And it probably means something highly specific that they didn't really, it doesn't matter though. It's still that thing.
Yeah, so the things that affect RA and ER is what's called the rhizosphere, which is the interconnected play between the plant's root system, the microbes, the soil content and the insects and things that are living in the soil as well, and how all of those interact, determining how many hydrogen ions are produced in that system, thus how much electricity is generated from it. But that's a neat little equation to try and sum it up for things. Where was I in this? Oh yeah, I was just about to say the output is dependent upon, and the four factors: the amount of root exudes, which is the PE, the root morphology, which is something entirely separate and dependent from plant to plant, but boils down mostly to root biomass, and a bit of the surface area. The photosynthetic efficiency, which is the photosynthetic pathway, and the relationship that particular plant species has with the microbes in that soil, which is not, to my knowledge, not readily understood that well. The paper does comment in that one of the things that they need to do is explore how the rhizosphere interacts with all of the different components to help determine maximum efficiencies and improve the efficiencies of these fuel cells. The other challenge that they talk about is for long-term operation of microbial fuel cells. They struggle to keep plants viable and with a stable environment for long periods of time, as it seems that they tend to deteriorate relatively quickly, as well as the electrode material deteriorating over time separately to that, which is stopping these from having a long-term use. It wasn't a particularly complicated paper. I think that's most of the points I remember. I did, because they didn't have one in this paper, I did grab an image of how the microbes actually form together, which is I've just posted in Journal Club and the voice and video chat links, so people can see that, where it is the plant is in the soil or in hydroponics or aquaponics of some kind, and with an anode, a semi-permeable membrane, and then water, and the cathode is in the water on the other side of the membrane, so it allows just the hydrogen ions to flow through without contaminating that side with any of the rhizosphere, or having that side affect the rhizosphere.
This would be a great time for if anybody had any questions about semi-permeable you know what I meant to say. Semi-permeable membranes. Yeah, this would be a great time to ask some questions about this. This is kind of some material science stuff, but it's also like osmosis. So if you're like, what do you mean? It just lets the hydrogen through. Like, now is a good time.
Yeah, I suppose a big thing is also keeping the oxygen out, right? So, I mean, what kind of materials are they using to, keep that anaerobic condition in the anode chamber?
The anaerobic condition is actually kept because the carbon dioxide is put out through the root system as well, which sort of forces an anaerobic condition to exist within the soil.
All right. Yeah, that.
When you're underwater or in dirt, there is less oxygen. That's how it works.
It would be a harder challenge having it be in aerobic conditions. Anyone else got any questions?
Just that, how does it work? Just that.
As in, how does the fuel cell work?
No, the membrane.
I have no idea how they work. I just remember that what they did from biology class years ago, that they allow certain smaller particles through.
Okay.
So if anybody's curious about that, I think that would be a good question to throw onto the chemistry or biology Discord board, and um, this is like one of the basic tenets of how you do purification or dealing with molecules or chromatography or even HPLC, kind of to a degree. It's all about very, very fine fibers. Like polymers are generally meshes. Like so, even like if you look at your mouse or your phone, like it's made out of plastic, but that technically on a molecular level, it is a mesh. So you have a mesh that you make at the right size, and it allows only things that can make it through the mesh, right? Like a colander, like a pasta strainer, but molecular sized.
Yeah, you asked about questions for the semi-permeable membrane. Do we know what they're using for it? Because it seems like a low temperature membrane that could be used for a low temperature hydrogen fuel cell. Because the majority of my knowledge is that hydrogen fuel cells tend to operate in really either hot conditions or basic conditions. This seems neither.
No, this would technically be an acidic condition, but it's not. It's not using it as a hydrogen fuel cell. It's the flow of the free hydrogen ions that's generating the electricity, not the burning of hydrogen.
Ah, because just wondering what they're using for it. Quite brilliant.
I am checking through the paper, but it just looks like they refer to it as membrane.
Shame.
You can buy this kind of membranes on AliExpress. It's not that expensive. It's not cheap per se, but I mean it's $50.
Sorry, we could
So
read that again. The line quality is terrible.
you can buy this kind of membrane that only allows hydrogen, free hydrogen to pass through on AliExpress and you can buy the full cell, the whole full cell built. But the complicated part is really the catalyst for the process of free hydrogen, and you get that by what I'm looking at. I don't know. I just got here, so I'm catching up. But
yes, it's a usually either ceramic or some type of polycarbon, which is just a fancy word for plastic, that's treated in a very specific way to have so the amount of cross-linking that you do with a polymer determines the pore size and structural abilities of the material. So you can literally sit down and just be like, okay, stopwatch on. I'm going to do exactly 72 seconds, and it's going to have the pore size I want. And then you neutralize the reaction. So this really gets into the chemical engineering. So if you're more interested in how that works, throw some questions into the chemistry area. But otherwise, it's like I hop onto AliExpress and just Google it, and you'll have a lot of options.
This is a review paper, so it's likely that they just left it out because people are doing different options in the different papers that they reference.
Exactly. Review papers are like that. You're going to have to dig through the references to really find the thing that works for you.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
How long do you think it'll take architects to design buildings that would be able to have their entire energy needs met by that solar punk-esque future? Because that's really where this is going, right?
Okay, so if we say that this is the only power source for it, let's see, it would take what is that? 1.26 square? No, 126 square kilometers, roughly, of this to power my computer.
Well, yeah.
So I don't think you're going to have a whole building just powered off this alone at any point.
But a couple of papers down the line, you know.
I mean, you'd have to engineer everything in there to just start producing a load of free hydrogen ions in excess for no real reason. And it's more, this acts as a carbon sink that also provides some electrical output and also cleans water supplies and also does who knows what else down the line. As well as it will just look nice, having every building covered in green opposed to covered in concrete.
Totally agreed. What'd you say you needed? How many square kilometers?
Very quick maths, but I probably got it wrong. 126, I think.
Square kilometers, like, or cubic kilometers?
Square. Cubic wouldn't
Yeah.
doesn't make sense in this because it's a surface area.
Yeah, when you're talking about land, you don't usually think about land in cubes. We don't live in Minecraft.
I am so confused. I really thought we did. Dang.
I know. I'm sorry.
Shucks.
Yeah, feel free to check my maths. It's 1.6 milliwatts per square kilometer. So I feel like I'm very wrong here.
You might not be. It might just be that efficient.
I mean, a computer runs like 700 watts, like if it's a gaming rig, or like a few hundred watts at least.
I think mine's 800.
Yeah.
Yeah, 750.
And just off the box.
Let's pull it back in, people.
Sorry. Carry on.
No, what was your question?
Just off the back of what I recall from mid studies with doing hydrogen ion-based stuff, when you get a animal or plant producing large quantities of hydrogen ions, they tend to die quickly because it tends to, make everything really acidic, and with plants just straight up don't like producing large quantities of that, and also living where they have also produced that large quantity of hydrogen ions, because it tends to get very, everything gets really peculiar. The osmotic balance goes out of whack. It's just recalling things and doing homeostasis-based stuff. So many reactions that don't work in that. Do we have many organisms that can survive in really acidic environments? Because otherwise they won't produce. They'll just die before they get there.
We're pulling hydrogen out.
Well,
yeah, that's the other thing. We're pulling hydrogen out, which means we're reducing the acidity.
Also, these are processes that already happen around the root systems of plants.
Yeah, this is more just like picking up waste electrons.
Yeah, so there's something in there that's already stabilizing it.
Yeah, this is like the electron version of driving around Frat Row and picking up the furniture that people have thrown out when it's summertime. Does that not make sense to other people? I'm sorry.
This is clean. This is a good reference.
I was just having a look at the diagram. I was looking where the ions are going and looking at the pathway. Like, same problem we have with ion thrusters is the charge has got to go somewhere. Yeah, I can see how it's taking the carbon sink, using a carbon sink as the sink for the hydrogen atoms themselves, so it can carry the charge. That's really cool. So I joined the chat about a little while ago, so I missed some of it if it's already been covered.
No, that's fine. It's a simple, relatively simple paper. Yeah, so there's not too much on it. Anyone else got any questions? Because I have actually covered everything I want to cover on the paper.
So we need to increase the efficiency of this by a factor of 10, a factor of 100 to, I'm thinking like a skyscraper covered in it. That's why I was asking for like the cubic
You need
kind
to,
of
Well,
it will need to be like more than 1,000 times to be comparable to a solar. Yeah.
well, we're not
So a
covering.
better, yeah, no, this isn't just like we're gonna put a rooftop garden on a building.
No, I'm
So
talking about
a way
building
to,
a new building with all of this, and we don't cover buildings now completely in solar panels. I'm saying that with a potential efficiency there, like 3%, then we can cover 100 times or 10 times more than what we do now with current solar power.
so you would need to cover actually over 1,000 times more square feet to have it equivalent to solar cells. Solar cells are about an average efficiency of 130 watts per square meter.
So I was going to say
So
also at
this
a
is-
super high cost, right? Like a way higher cost. I mean, the semi-permeable membrane for one is pretty expensive, and then using a lot of different materials for the cathode electrode and the anode electrode, I think would in the end make it really
What if
expensive.
is silicone work for electrode material, cathode material? You know,
no, silicone does not.
Well,
silicone doesn't
One-
like
Carbon
hydrogen.
does tend, graphite tends to.
Silicone.
Yeah,
So-
that,
Yeah,
that-
ones I've
Silicone's a
seen before use
semiconductor.
like carbon cloth or a carbon foam. But
What about
that's pretty much what
biochar?
I said. Carbon paper.
So the takeaway here is that there's this really cool concept. But it's kind of like it's small. And it's a small concept. But one of the problems that we have when we're thinking about these is that we always want the biggest, easiest thing. We're like, why would I use solar when I can just burn gasoline, or like set some coal on fire? And so one of the things that we're looking at here is basically it's like when we're talking about owner of own, when you're talking about like architecture, city design, that type of stuff.
I'm playing the devil's advocate to kind of unlock the matrix for the rest of the.
Right. So what this is like a city is an entire dish. Okay, but sometimes you only put in a pinch of pepper and salt. But that doesn't mean that it's not important. It's just another aspect. Also, it allows us to understand a little bit more about how things move on a molecular level in a place that we don't normally look at. It's not just about like, how do I functionalize this? How do I make it work for me? It's also just about learning about this cool concept and being like, oh, this is another piece of understanding about how the world works. And then when you're doing something else that might not be directly connected to this, you can be like, oh, but wait a second. I remember this whole thing about membranes or something like that. It's all about pieces. It's not about products.
I just took another look through the paper. They use carbon fiber tubes for one of them, and then everything else is graphite. But the graphite always deteriorates over time, so you'd have to replace that as well. So it would become quite costly if you did this incredibly large scale.
Yes, in its current form, I agree. Totally infeasible.
Not
With-
unfeasible, just not used for electrical production. The electrical output allows you to monitor how things are happening with the plants and the microbes in the soil. Because the healthier that is, the more electrical output there is. Does it make sense?
Absolutely.
I suppose then this is sort of like an outlet also to optimize this synchronous nature between the microbes and plants, basically to sort of optimize culture of microbes living with specific species of plants.
I think that's already fairly good. Nature does a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, we just forget about that sometimes.
Humans make better processors.
Humans make understood processors.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. It's already optimized. Nature does all the work.
Like Gabe was saying, this is letting us know how things are working much more than bending it to our will. Does anyone else have further questions?
Well, on that note, I'm going to take over here. I see a lot of people here in Journal Club, and I know that a lot of you have been digging through the papers and contributing papers in various channels and stuff like that. And this is actually the last person on the sign-up list right now. So I'm really hoping that I know that a couple of people on the Journal Club channel popped in and they were like, hey, I want to talk about something. I just got DM'd by somebody who's like, hey, I want to talk about something. It's like, cool, get your butt on there. I know it's weird and scary to talk to like a bunch of random people and you're like, who are you? You're just a giant tripehedron and some sort of hipster crow. I don't know who these people are. But it's important that you learn how to communicate the knowledge that you read, because you can read stuff and then be like, ah, yes, I totally get this. But if it can't come out the mouth, if it only goes in the eyes but it doesn't come out the mouth, then it's not going to be able to come out in your hands when you want to do physical work either. You have to be able to like do that other thing. And also sometimes it's totally like if somebody wants to be like, okay, I need an example. If somebody wants to throw me a paper that you guys think is completely outside my wheelhouse, I don't know what that would be. Probably something in physics. I hate physics. And then have me read it and break it down so that I can learn more and show you that it's okay to do that. I'm also willing to do that too. But I would like to see more of you guys getting excited about Journal Club and being like, this is a cool thing I found. Because there's a lot of people here and they're all talking all the time. So why don't we talk with each other? He said,
yes,
hopefully.
Please. Yes.
Thank you.
Let's learn together.
Thank you for sharing today, Ollie.
Not a problem. Hopefully someone will sign up for next week's one.
Can I ask a dumb question?
No such
No
thing.
dumb questions.
What is a journal club? I'm sorry, I
that's fine.
No, that's a totally not a dumb question because they don't do. This is like a strictly science academia habit. You have a paper, you read the paper, and then you're like, okay, I could, in theory, give the paper to everyone, and then everyone's going to read the paper, and they're all going to read it in different ways because we've all learned different ways to learn and to read. But this way, you can be like, this is how I read the paper, and then other people can contribute back, hopefully, where they say, hey, yes, and then I also noticed this. So this allows us to take, instead of just being isolated little nerds behind a computer screen, we have the ability to communicate with each other and share our understanding of the paper. And then we have some people who have strong backgrounds in fields, like so anything with biology or chemistry, I'm always going to be jumping in. And it's the same for some other people, though nobody here has talked too much about like the actual structural chemistry and things like that. But it's really it's a chance to overlap our understandings so that we get a more complete picture of how the paper works, because these papers are written by people that have spent sometimes over decades studying materials. And so when they're like, oh, like, yeah, and then you just do this, 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 and this. And you're like, what the heck do you mean? It's in the same way that I don't know. I don't know anything about cars except how to change a spark plug. And it's like when somebody comes out and they start talking about the engine, I'm like, look, dude, you know it. I don't. Just do the thing. I don't. Not my thing. So this allows us to start overlapping so that we communicate better and we learn better.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
No, if
So,
not, no one
come
has
on,
anything
somebody
to
do
add?
it.
I suppose, how do we ask permission first? Let's say we have a paper we want to share with the group.
I don't care.
I just put myself in the sign up sheet.
Oh,
I
so
posted
yeah,
this
we-
paper in one channel.
there's a
Soyzik
sign-up
said for
sheet.
me to do this. I put it in the sign up sheet.
You put it in the
Awesome.
sign-up sheet. You make sure that your paper is in the to be sorted at least, so that other people can access it. You put a link up so other people can see it in the sign-up sheet, and then you're like, "Boosh! I'm going to do this paper."
Wait, where is the
Yeah.
sign-up sheet?
In the
It's
library,
pinned in the journal club.
but yeah.
Ainsley made a pin for it. It's there.
I was looking at the wrong channel.
Journal club.
And it's
If
also
you don't
just been
know
posted in voice and video chat links.
Yeah.
If you don't know Discord very well, up at the top of the screen, there's a bunch of icons. One of them's a pinned message icon.
It's a skeuomorph. It's a pin that looks like a pin, even though it's technically just a button.
It is a button.
It is a button. So the other thing that I would really love is, so even though some of you haven't gone to university and some of you have, and some of you are pre-university or might not ever go, the standard method of educating is lecturing, which is why there's like 2, 4, I don't know, there's like 20 of you, and you're
25.
all just sitting here being quiet, not asking questions, not doing anything else. You're just listening. You're hoping that the knowledge will flow into your eyeball. So,
Well, like on a
I
real
s-
lecture, everyone's sleeping.
yeah, exactly. So I strongly suggest that we start to try, like, journal clubs are supposed to be participatory. Like, you're supposed to be like, hey, what about this? You know, when we got off onto that whole thing about the membrane, that's actually good. Being able to pull it back around and continue through with the paper, also good. But not asking questions means that you're just like passively hoping that the knowledge will seep into your head. And that doesn't actually work, guys.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. So, how much should you really understand and be good at the field that you want to present? I have a paper that I think it's interesting, but I don't understand it 100%. Is it still okay for me to try, even if I
Right.
will not?
Totally go for it. Yes.
Yeah.
Find something that you don't understand. Be like, hey, I know fuck all about this, but I read this paper and it sounds cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
chances are we're gonna help you figure it out. We're gonna actually help. We're gonna figure it out
Yeah,
ourselves.
it's a
as
team
well,
effort
yeah.
here.
Yep.
Okay, I will sign up.
Team